wait until it comes up. Yes. Permissions given. And then I have to mute it.
Been a while since we ran through this whole exercise.
Yes, it's been a lot of traveling and we've been all over the place. All right, we're live. And speaker view. So yes, welcome everybody. Happy that you're here. And as you've heard, Lorenz has been to Bulgaria.
Yes.
To a festival. Are we calling it a festival?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, they organized they did call it Human Design Rave Festival. And it was I think the biggest event since Ra died, is what several people told me from that were actually at the last event. That was the Ra still organized it, but then he passed away, and the event still happened in Ibiza. So I met at least two people who said that they were specifically coming because it was the biggest gathering of human design people since then, and that's like 12 years ago.
Biggest meaning how many people were there?
We were between 100 and 140 people in place. And then there was online as well. So some of the things were streamed that were live, but others were also purely online. So there was a much bigger community online that either followed or had their own content.
Okay, and what made you decide to go there?
I was in a Facebook group. I think you are there too, Human Design Gatherings or something it's called. And there was a guy that posted that he had bought a 2-for-1 tickets, but he doesn't have the second person. And that was really funny, I thought. So I wrote to him and told him that I need to wait a few days until I know, but that I think I would like to come. And that's basically, after a few days, it still felt good. So I said yes. And actually, I then also rented an Airbnb with this guy from Zurich. So we were kind of together for the whole festival. He's a projector, and it was funny. Yeah. I think I maybe saw it on Facebook before, but I didn't have an impulse to go, and only this post made it. So I felt like going.
The people there, what was it like being amongst the crowd? Were they all beginners or were they?
For me it was really extraordinary. And please, if any of you are curious about anything, please ask as well. But to me, it was the first time that it was many first times in a lot of ways, and it was really transformative. That's also why we felt like it might be interesting to talk about it a little bit longer and for others to hear as well. But the people were in human design usually for longer than me. Like, I think I was in about, I would say 2/3 were into human design for a longer time, and 1/3 was like me or less. And that's not what I'm used to. Usually we talk to people who are newer to human design than we are. But that was a change of pace, and that was really comfortable and really interesting to be around people who have been immersed in their experiment for a long time. And maybe one of the biggest things during that time, what I tasted And what I sampled is a different kind of culture, a different kind of atmosphere. It's almost like it was flipped on its head. Like usually weirdness is weird and as a uniqueness is weird and homogenization is normal. Like if you don't do what everybody else does, you're weird. And there it was flipped on the head. Like homogenization felt weird and being unique and weird felt normal. And that was so incredibly relaxing. I've never experienced that anywhere else. So there was a truly different culture where instead of judgment or like, you know, people looking at you in a weird way because you just didn't like, because you simply followed your own timing or whatever, you know, it's a feeling or a frequency. If you just do what feels right to you, people usually judge it or they look a little bit strange at you. And there it was met with curiosity, it was met with openness. And I could just feel that kind of most people, the general culture, the general agreement is that uniqueness is interesting. And it came from a deep level. Like it didn't come from we all wanted to be like this. It was a felt experience. And that was, to me, that was really, really good. Like that felt so, so good.
I suppose, especially as a reflector, that must have particularly felt good, because your tempo is, you know, you take a month to take a decision, and that's so much slower. And you were able to say to the projector, I'll know in a few days for sure. And that's just accepted. That's very unusual, of course.
Yeah.
So do you think it was also for other people who are much faster, like people with sacral authority?
Yeah, I talked to others as well, and I think it was like, I'm not sure if we talked about this specifically, and I'm sure it's special for reflectors to be in that field also because we kind of need this correctness to thrive. But this culture or atmosphere is such a basic thing that it has a huge impact on everybody, not just reflectors. It's like, you know, you go into a country and there's a certain culture, or in a village there's a certain culture. Even each family has its own culture. But the culture of the festival, the culture of the human design people was just specifically this agreement that we go for uniqueness and this is what we're interested in. And I'm sure that has a big impact on everyone who is also interested in that and usually doesn't have that in everyday life.
So if you start up a conversation with somebody at this festival, is the first thing that you ask, what are you? What's your profile? What's your strategy and authority?
I mean, it changes, of course, but I mean that's simply festival, like how a festival works, right? In the beginning, you don't know the other, you have no idea, and then this might be actually what you're most interested in. But then you might be at an event together, you might hear something that the other talked about that really interested you, and then the conversation gets much more around shared experiences, like what did you think about that thing, or why did you say that, or I found it really interesting what you shared, or la la la. And then it still pretty quickly is, oh, and what are you? And like that is a basis for like, pretty quickly people want to know your profile and authority so they can interact with you in a way that's correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, you'd need t-shirts, right? So people can just look at you and
Yeah,
how I talk to you.
we had them. We had little, you know, where nameplates, instead of nameplates, it was a little body graph, no bigger than this maybe, and you could color in your centers so people would who they're talking to.
That's great. That's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'm assuming there were talks, parallel talks, maybe even with so many people in the mornings and afternoons, and you chose which talks you went to. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, that's how it worked exactly.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the reflectors that were there and how that interaction happened. What did
Yeah,
you learn from other reflectors?
that was really special actually. We were all in all 8 reflectors, which is about 8 times more than statistically should be there in 100 people. And of those, 6 were there at all times, and there were 3 elder women who were into human design like about 20 years. And then it was me and a younger woman, and also another woman who was into human design maybe 15 years. And that was really mind-blowing. Like, that was so interesting because seeing like other reflectors, how they interact, how they move through the world, and then I can start having discernment, right? I see how they go through the world, I can compare with how I go through the world, and I get information about what's reflector and what is simply personality or personal. So that was really, really interesting. It was funny, like, still in this festival with people, 140 people, nobody really knows what the reflector is here for. Like, even in this field, we are still kind of unicorns. We're still kind of, we're regarded with, well, different things, but the most usual is like curious non-understanding. It's like, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say something here.
Yeah, please do.
So this is what the reflector is always about. He always wants to know what he's here for. Okay, and that's never going to change. That's just the way it is. Just like the hermit wants to be found and is never going to be found because he always wants to be found. So as a reflector, never always asking that question, but not really ever getting a satisfying answer because you're not supposed to get a satisfying answer. I can, after spending so much time with you, I truly have a sense of what the reflector is here for. Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe they should invite you to talk about it. I'm sure that would be very interesting.
Yes, maybe next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when is the next time?
I don't know. Maybe they're gonna do another one next year. It was quite a success, I believe. It must have been a lot of work. It was also very personal, which was very nice as well. I mean, the organizers were there all the time. It was just people hanging.
And so you and I, we did have a little talk just after you came back, and you talked a little bit about the difference between the seven-centered and the nine-centered being.
Yeah. Can you remind me what I said? Just
that the seven-centered was about survival.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was something that I found that really impacted me. That the way the how the nine-centered being is supposed to function is with a trust and a knowingness that everything that we need is present in every moment. And the seven-centered being works very differently. So the change was in 1782 or something, where the centers split and we became nine-centered. And still most of us live in, or most of the world lives in a seven-centered way, and the seven-centered way is about planning and survival. Like how, like storing food for winter is a very seven, it's not like, not that it's wrong or whatever, but it's a very seven-centered way of living. Being worried about the future and preparing to survive in the future. And the nine-centered way is very different. Is you might still prepare, but not out of fear and planning, but simply because your body moves. And in this movement, in this knowing, in this deep realization or feeling state that everything I need is present at the moment, at all times, kind of liberates the personality to think and talk about the interesting questions, like human design, or why are we here, or whatever, spirituality, or yeah, whatever. The nine-centered focus is not supposed to be on survival. That's why we have our design. That's why we have strategy and authority. And through the experiment, we can learn how our body, our design takes care of us. There is no need to think about survival. We can think about much more interesting things.
So this whole prepper thing that's happening now, people getting ready for all sorts of catastrophes. If you do it just because the body does it, because your authority is and strategy is in line with it, it's fine. But if you're doing it from the mind, you're still working in the seventh-centered being. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we tried, didn't we? We tried to prepare for apocalypse, and it never worked. And in the end, the apocalypse never happened. So it would have been a waste of energy.
Yes, so that brings us to 2027 and the big shift in 2027. What do we know? What information has come out for you at the festival?
I mean, there's a lot of technical information, and I think we covered that in one of our videos, right? We're going to shift across on the global kind of, yeah, how it works mechanically. But to me, what was maybe more impactful was a feeling that I got. So often, and I think there were a few comments just recently in our Telegram group, it was kind of that when Ra talks about 27, it sounds so dire. It sounds so dark. And at the festival, like 2027 is a big topic, but nobody is afraid. None of the speakers has any fear about 2027. And I mean, of the participants neither, without kind of, without making it sound very colorful or flowery. But what came out to me is like everything in human design, it's a potential and it's a duality. The shifting away from this energy that we have, that is a lot about institutions and family and bonds and society and the big society, more towards individuality and everybody for themselves, has as like you can fabricate as many negatives, what that means, as you can talk about positives. And maybe for me that was actually the biggest takeaway, just the frequency with which people talked about 2027. I mean, a lot of things that maybe like New World Order or organizing smart cities or controlling the population, that's going to be really, 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 really hard, because you need a big institution to control all that. But that's not the energy where we're going to. And a positive outcome of the new way, like that to me seems very probable would be much more localized structures, localized gatherings, like, you know, the village, and then the village trades with another village, but a lot less global. And of course, the globalization has nice things too. But to me, that is something that sounds pretty good. I think even a lot of us actually, we have already moved away from relying on governmental structures, because somewhere within we know that this is not stable and this is not safe. So I think for many of us and many in the human design community, the shift will, and I mean, Una said this many years ago, that it's good to create a little bit of distance from these governmental institutions, just so if they break down, it won't be as much of a shock. And again, you can't do this with the mind or out of a mental construct. It's only where strategy and authority lead you. But for me, this is very much what happened. So yeah, I'm mostly curious.
Yeah, to me, I already sort of sense the shift. I mean, I guess Ra sensed the shift back in 2008 when he talked about institutions collapsing, and probably many of us can sense the shift. I'm really excited about, you know, what will it actually feel like when that happens in, I think it's February or March 2027. So you made it sound like there's a bit of tribalism, you know, small tribes coming up, but as far as I understood, it's more about individualism. And yet, I know what you're saying. It's not like the tribes are going to fall apart. It's just like it's more communities rather than tribes, a group of unique beings rather than a group of homogenized beings.
Yeah, exactly. Like even, you know, even I mean, we're still gonna be humans, plus raves, but humans want to interact. We're not all gonna live on a hill somewhere suddenly. There's gonna be transaction, there's gonna be, you know, working together, but in a different way, not based on the, like you say, not based on the tribal glue of same gods, same needs, all these things that have to be the same for us to feel like we belong, but much more in a, this is me and this is what I find interesting, and this is you and this is what you find interesting, and now we can still do something together.
So talk to us a little bit about awareness and the penta.
Yeah, we just talked about that before. There was a really, so something that I really liked about the festival was that it was a big focus on practical experiments. It wasn't all blah blah talks. It was actually, I would say, almost 50-50 people who made experiments possible. And there was a big one about the penta, and there was a big one about the wa. So for those who maybe don't know, the penta is 3 to 5 people, and the wa is from 10 people upwards. The possibility of a wa, anyway. And they they guide, you could say, it's like the puppet masters. We are not individuals anymore when we are in penta. Also, I mean, it's always a mix, but there is some other force that we are not aware of that is guiding a lot of the energy of what's happening in groups. And it's highly complex and very interesting. And the experiments, so one experiment was, I think, 4 hours. That was rather simple. That was 2 groups of 5, and they had in a lot of pressure, like time pressure and other pressure, they had to fabricate the product. So just come up with a product and sell it to the group, to the whole group that was there. And then the group kind of said which one was better. And then they could first, that's not true. First it was 3 people, and then they presented it, and then there was kind of, okay, which one is better? And then they did with the we had this imaging program as well when it comes to Penta, like with looking at which channels are missing and which gates. They got new people from the crowd, and they had another round, and then they presented the same or a different product again. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
So just for those who aren't quite aware of the Penta only considers these 6 channels. So as soon as you're more than 2 people, as soon as you're 3 people, all we're looking at is these 6 channels.
yeah, exactly.
And we're looking at, so what Lorenz is saying is we're looking at whether with these 3 people, all these channels are defined.
Yeah. And what was super interesting was just seeing that the group that first had a better presentation. In the second round, the other group won, which had a much worse presentation in the first round. But the group that won in the end, they got someone which filled all their channels. They had maybe 2 gates missing or something, or 3, and they got someone who had everything, so they were full. And the other group was still missing a gate. And it was interesting, then they talked about what was missing and how you could see it in the chart, and you could actually see it. Like maybe there was presentation missing, or there was, another one of the energies missing, and you could see it because it was visible when they discussed with each other. We could see everything. It was just in the room. So what it showed me was how much influence this has mechanically, and how hard it can be to make something work as a group. I mean, this was business, right? This was the business side, not the family side. But to make something work on a business end or simply on a project end, if you have gates missing, it's gonna haunt you. You can't fix it. Doesn't mean
And
it's
you could just have a person who has nothing to do with the business, but completes your aura as a Penta, just sitting there with you, and then the business will run.
Yeah, the outcome will be very different. So seeing that was almost a bit spooky. You could see that they didn't have time to really work on it. They had maybe 3 minutes to talk about things. So it was not that suddenly they were all much more intelligent. They simply had access to different energy, and the presentation was completely different. That was fun. That was really fantastic to see. And then the VAR experiment was maybe the thing that I liked the most in the festival. There was an experiment with 16 people. That's one full bar, where you had to sign up, and then there was the VAR had to organize an evening. Like an evening was free, and there were some structures in place. There were some cocktails, and it was a kind of mingling cocktail party event. And it was set up with, so a penta is a wa is 3 pentas, 3 times 5 people, plus an alpha, a leader. And again, it's highly, highly complex if you want to go into the details of the energies that are present in Wa. But it was so cool to kind of, almost role play it, to really do it, but not take it completely seriously, but being observant. And for me, it was also, I was outside, I was the 17th person. And for the first time, it felt like I was actually in the right spot, like in a project, in something that was happening. So there were these 3 times 5 groups who were working on different things. Like one was decoration, one was connecting events, and one was entertainment, I believe. And I simply floated around, and through the course of the evening avoided at least one major catastrophe by being able to simply float from one place to the other, observe what's happening and being in the right moment at the right time, and often kind of provide a bird's eye view on what's happening so people can be aware of what's actually happening, and get out a little bit of the being of the tunnel vision. And then once the event was over, and it was major chaos because we didn't have enough time to set up the pentas in the right way. So there was channels and gates missing everywhere. And I mean, the alpha was a manifester, which is maybe not the wisest of all choices that you can make. But it was a lot of fun. And then we had a full, I think, 4 hours to deconstruct everything. And the woman who organized it, she went through tons of work, put up the charts, pulled up the charts of all the 16 people, of all the pentas, of how they connect in the WA, what was present, what was not present. And she also assigned observers to every one of the pentas, which simply walked behind the pentas to see what they were doing, and one for the alpha. And you could see, you know, because there was no, again, it's from the business side, so it was very much into how workplaces work. And it was so cool because there wasn't this pressure that you might get fired. So at some point, like, the projectors were running out of energy, and you could see how they dropped on the floor. Like, suddenly the projectors were just lying on the floor because there was not, it wasn't clear what was going to do. Also, there in one penta there were 3 projectors or 4 projectors, and you could see all the not selves, like the super slave projector, which was assigned the leader of the penta, which was doing all the work while the others were actually correct in not doing anything anymore because it was useless. And yeah, it was just so cool to see all this life. I mean, I think Una and me, when we traveled together, we had this experiment ongoing for 2.5 years. But to see it with so many people, and to see all the interactions, and have aware people who know about human design, who know about themselves, able to reflect what they experienced, how it felt, it was simply amazing. Yeah, I really like that one.
Yes, how often have I seen projectors just sort of sliding down on the couch so that the energy doesn't hit them directly and they can still stay there? Yeah, it must have been a lot of fun. Yes, so you were number 17, just floating. That's great. So
And the idea was, of course, that people would ask me for information, but they are not used to this, so they didn't really know how to make use of the evaluator. So I had to kind of bring myself in, but it was still very interesting.
yeah, because that's exactly, you said this is where you felt really comfortable in that position, and that's exactly what I always say and see, that you see the whole group, you see exactly what everybody is doing in a very different way from me, and you can see what needs to be done, and then you need to inform somebody who can do something about it.
Exactly, yeah. And having an alpha, where it's clear, like, I don't have to do anything, I just have to relay information. That's
to
really
the alpha person. Yeah.
Or the groups or whoever needs it. But yes,
yeah, all you have to do is speak. You don't have to actually
move everything, which is another thing that I really like about the WA, because it makes it so visible, is that the alpha is a role. The alpha has nothing to do with value or respect. The alpha doesn't get more respect than anybody else. The alpha is best if they have the 45-21 from the throat to the heart, because they can move people. But actually, they said it's better if they only have the 45 and the 21 is in someone else, because makes it a bit easier. But anyway, to see that leadership, leading, is simply a role and not, I mean, that's maybe going a bit off topic, but in the eco village kind of movement or community movement, there is a big focus on all leaders. You know, everybody needs to lead. We need to exchange leadership. To me, that doesn't make sense. Like, let the people lead who are good at leading, but take away the overvaluation of who is leading and simply make it a role like gardener, because that's what it is. Like the gardener, the leader, the shaman, the cook, they all have simply roles with which they have to fill, so it works well, or so that the positions are filled, and putting value on them so that everybody can be a leader a little bit, because then we all can have a little bit of value. This just makes no sense.
No, and it's the 45 here, this gate. It just means that you can actually move people, but it doesn't mean you have the knowledge or the wisdom where to move them. It's not a gate that gives you that information. That comes from other gates and channels. Yes, and it's like the indigenous wisdom where we talk about being in circle, and the shaman is just a role, and it's not necessarily the nicest role. And you can imagine, let's say it's a circle of animals, and you don't ask the bird to swim, and you don't ask the fish to fly, and everybody has to just take their role. Yes, so that's, you could see that much clearer when you were there at the festival.
Yeah, and it goes really in detail, like the roles necessary and where the roles are, and that the roles are actually in the body graph. So you have them by design. You are born with certain roles, with certain abilities, and the penta analysis makes it visible.
Mm-hmm. The penta? Why the penta?
The wa, sorry. The wa.
Wa. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just looking for a diagram. I'm not finding a diagram of the wa. So let's talk about the change in the solar plexus that's coming with the raves.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm bringing this up again. So this, we've got three awareness centers. We've got the splenic awareness center, which is awareness of the body, basically. Then we have the awareness center, the ajna, which is awareness of what we're thinking. And then we have the emotional awareness center, which is the last emotion center that has come in, which is awareness of our emotions. So in what is the information we get from our body? What is the information we get from our thinking? What is the information we get from our emotions? And we're none of those. We're not our body, not our mind, not our emotions. So now Ra is talking about the movement of the emotional center to becoming an awareness center. Did you hear anything or pick anything up there?
Yeah. It was 2027, and the change and all that was a big topic. And what maybe for me was the most important thing with the solar plex. The solar plex mutation is supposed to be finished in 2027. And it comes with change of certain channels. The 1949 most specifically is going to change. They have a connection now, they won't have a connection later, and that has a lot of interesting impacts. But when it comes to awareness, what I understood is that we are, with the mutation of the solar plex, it's almost like we get a new instrument, and most explains a lot of what we're seeing in the world and what we're seeing in us, especially in like people who are described as being hypersensitive, and there's more and more of them. But what the solar plex does is, before it was just a motor, so the emotions can be a very strong motor, like joy, pain, sadness, very strong motor, but the awareness wasn't necessarily there. And now we get access to information through the solar plex, through our nervous system, that we have never had access to before, or only very few people. And that is kind of frequencies. That is basically everything that the spleen and the mind are not able to process. But how I see it, it's frequency and energy is what we are able to interpret now that we have not been able to interpret before. And it will change our awareness completely of what's going on in the world. And this is also the last, you could say, the last stage of mutation of our Homo sapiens human form. And after that, you could say we are complete. So it took, I don't know how many million years to get to this place, and it's happening in 3 years. It's kind of crazy if you believe the evolutionary idea of human design. But we are very close to something very special. And yeah, it made so much sense to me, because that's how I start communicating with people. I can't really get the words of language or frequency out of my vocabulary anymore, because they're so crucial. I can't talk about reality without talking about frequency, without talking about energy. And 10 years ago, probably it would almost have been a case for the loony bin, but it becomes normal. People start to understand.
Yes, that's right. I remember the time when the word aura was very exotic. Not everybody knew what that is. Yes, and you're now the other interesting thing is, and I finished writing my book on emotions in 2017, I think, and that's exactly when I started learning about human design. That's when I first met human design. And I talk in the book about the solar plexus being the way we navigate our emotions. And here we too have the solar plexus navigating the emotions. This is where we feel from our solar plexus, we feel the energies, the frequencies that are coming in.
Yeah, so maybe the easiest way or most pragmatic way to describe is that the solar plex will lose its motor function, and it will become purely an awareness center. And I think that is very hard to imagine all the consequences that this is going to have if we are not driven by pain, hope, joy, love anymore, but we simply have ability to get pure data, information, and awareness out of that. I think that's going to be a major change.
I feel it, I feel it. I'm there. It's fabulous. I don't get angry anymore. I don't get sad anymore. I just feel love for the people who steal from me. It's really, a few years back that wouldn't have been possible. So let's see, what else did we talk about?
Well, maybe Kai or Helik or Antti or Susie has a question too. Maybe we can.
Absolutely. Anytime you have a question, just raise your hand. No. I also want to hear about manifestors because you found out some really interesting things about manifestors.
Yeah. Yeah, it was there was a woman, maybe 50, who is a manifester, who was simply amazing. Like, she really rocked my boat when it comes to manifestors. She had a talk about manifestors, and there is so much that I understood for the first time about manifestors. And maybe the thing that's easiest to understand for me was that we all have a way that we want to be spoken to. And for generators and projectors and even reflectors, for me, it was pretty clear, but I never really got the manifestors. Like, I never really knew how to address the manifestors. The generators, I can ask a direct question. That's easy. The projectors, I can invite. I now know the energy of invitation, so that's easy too. The reflectors, you don't really have to worry, just give them time. But how do you deal with the manifester? You can't really ask them, you can't really invite them. And she was very strict about, like, she didn't like being asked. She didn't want to be asked. It was not the right energy. Like, if you ask the manifester, hey, do you want to go swimming, they can't initiate anymore. And the way she said it is, inform the space. That manifestors have a very strong connection to the space, and that kind of links reflectors and manifestors. But she described it as if there is a lot of information in the space, and every now and then the information in the space comes to her, and she can react. Also, she doesn't react on that, but she can kind of move out of that information. So what she has a family, so she talked about a lot about, of course, the mechanics in the family with a man who is a generator, I believe. That the easiest way would be if one of the kids or her husband would say something like, we're thinking about going to the beach, and he wouldn't say it to her, he would say it to the kitchen. Like, we were talking earlier, and well, yeah, we're thinking we might want to go to the beach, and then nothing happens. And at some point, this information floats back to her, and she's like, beach? Somebody said beach. Yes, let's go to the beach. Okay, now we all go. Or I want to go. And that was, I mean, she didn't simply talk, she really transmitted, like, through her energy, what she meant. It was so easy to grasp what she meant when she spoke. But it gave me a solution finally on how to address manifestors. And I later, because there's one question that I had from our experiments in New Zealand, actually, where frequently, we would be in a group, Una and me and a group of people, and we were doing human design experiments and funny things. And then it was, if the question was, okay, do we want to go to have dinner together? It's quite easy to ask all the generators. You ask, hey, who of the generators do you want to go for dinner? And they go, or they go, And then you have the projectors. Okay, we're going to go for dinner, and you're all invited to come. It'd be lovely if you come. Then you turn to the manifestor, and it's kind of, you can't say anything, but you can't ignore them because it feels bad. Like, I don't want to not. Yeah, it was so funny. Like, we stood there, Una was turned to Matt and kind of, was looking for words, was looking on how to address this person. And we tried different things. Sometimes we didn't say anything, but that doesn't feel good. That feels like we're not acknowledging the person that he is there. So I asked her later specifically, how can I address the manifestor without addressing him or her? And what she said is that, say something like, I wonder what the manifestors thinks.
Okay.
If you want like if I want her to speak about her experience of manifestors and there's a little group of people, I would say something like, I wonder what the manifestor has to say. I wonder if the manifestor has something to say about that. And of course, that's a blueprint. It doesn't have to sound like that. But the energy is this thing of, I'm curious about this. I wonder if the manifestor has anything to say. And then maybe they will react and maybe they don't. But it's clear that there is an interest without having ignored the manifestor, like you've indirectly acknowledged that he or she is there. And informed them. So there was a lot of mutual informing. The manifestor really wants to be informed. It's not only that they inform, they want to be informed. So they want to know if something is happening that impacts them or that is really important for them. They want to know. For example, this woman didn't know that the room changed in where she was talking, and she had to get over her anger of not being informed and being in the room first. So she was angry for like 3 minutes and then it was gone. But
Manifestor,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was super, super, super cool to have a manifestor, and like, she is not comfortable. She is not a nice person. She is very kind, but she's not nice. And we were playing a game later that evening, a human design game, and we would all be playing and happy, and somebody would ask her a question and the energy was wrong, and she would just turn and say, I don't ask me questions, and then continue playing. And she said this thing of don't ask me questions is probably the thing she has said a million times to her husband. Like, but how can you be strict? How can you really enforce how you want to be treated without being judgmental or without being angry? I mean, she probably gets angry at some point, but that's not what comes across. It's really a setting of space that works for her. And I found that really inspiring.
So really just the opposite of a generator. As a generator, I would need to say, please ask me a question.
Yes.
Don't tell me what to do, ask me a question.
Yes. Or don't invite me, ask me a question. Can you ask me yes or no? Like, I don't know what to do with this invitation. Can you ask me if I want to come? Something like that.
Yeah. Did you learn anything new about generators and projectors?
I met a generator woman, pure generator sacral, that went through life in a way that was new for me. I had never experienced that. She had her sacral sound was part of her speaking. So it would be a very direct connection. She wanted to ask me something or say something to me. So she started talking, and then she asked me, can you ask me if I want to share? So I asked her, do you want to share? And she went, uh-huh. And then she would start talking, and I would maybe have a comment, and she would go, uh-huh. And she would continue talking, then go, uh-huh. And it was simply embedded in her talking, in her movement, in her life. And what it allowed me to see very directly is how far removed she was from what is going on, not in a disassociated way, but very deep inside, observing what her body said and to. She had no idea what was going to happen 5 seconds from then. Mm-hmm. She had an idea maybe that she wanted to share something, but she was aware that it was an idea, so she wanted me to ask her again so she can hear herself if she wants to share. And then she was probably surprised by what she's sharing, or maybe she had thought about before, but the rest of the conversation, she had no idea what was going to happen. And that was amazing. to be honest. That was really, really cool. That felt very creative, very unique, very surrendered to the process and not identified with any idea of what's supposed to happen. There was another, but that's just a blip of data. There was a generator having a whole talk about how trauma can impact the sacral response. And you can see like there's memory streams in the design and they go through the sacral, and you can't actually, like, your authority doesn't work if there is trauma. If it's strong enough, it will take over your sacral response, which was important information for my, just for me, but also very interesting in general. I guess it's true for everybody's authority, but for the generator, it's so, I mean, they have access. They're the only ones to really have access, if they are a sacral generator, to an answer in the now. So you can ask them things, and at least I had maybe the expectation that if someone is connected with their sacral, this answer is always available. But if there is trauma that is strong enough, that's actually not true.
Then the answer is incorrect. Is that what it is? Then instead of it's or it's just not there.
It becomes blurry. It becomes unclear what the answer is. They can't have. Yeah, it might be like you say. It might be if it actually is something, is a or they start getting confused, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And the memory streams, which ones are the memory streams?
Oh, I would have to look it up. I don't remember. It's rather complex. It's quite a few. Like it explained how memories are formed.
It's one of those.
And stored.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a few. And about the projectors, not really. Maybe there was a very cool little event or exercise where they laid out a big body graph on the ground, and you could step in your centers and feel how that feels.
Mm.
And then also step in with one foot in one center and with another foot in another center, for example. And when it was the projector's turn, the guy, self-a-projector, said, hold on, choose someone to step inside for you, because they can't see themselves. Like projectors see others, they can't see themselves, and it's much easier for them to see themselves if they are played by someone else that they then can see. And the woman was first a little bit perplexed, but then it was very helpful, and she was very happy to be able to observe herself moving in the body graph.
That's really interesting. Yes, projector needs to see himself outside of himself.
Yeah, they don't have. I think I'm not like I don't know how difficult it is for projectors to truly, like, how it works with self-awareness, self-reflection, but I think they really have a hard time to see themselves. They are designed to see the other.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still open for questions. Okay.
I'd be interested in the shift you mentioned for the solar plexus. Like you mentioned, it's gate 1949, which will be affected. Is it something that affects like all of us, or only those born after 2027?
It It affects all of us because that's gonna be the background frequency. So even if you don't have it, it will still work differently. So it will affect all of us.
Okay, I'm curious because like 1949 is the only gate I have.
The only channel.
Yeah, the only channel I have, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that will be super interesting to see how you experience that shift. Of course, it will be most distinct in the people born after 2027 because they will genetically, biologically, they will have that different while you are still born with it. So it's still gonna work in you.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gonna break down, and it's kind of, the way it's described is like the 19 is firing at the 49 with its needs and pressures, and the 49 is kind of responding with principles about the needs. And so basically, the 1949 is a lot about tribal glue, like the needs of the tribe, like shelter, survival, gods, religion is a big need of the tribe. And the 49 establishes principles based on these needs. But now there's going to be a break, and the 49 will be free to establish principles in whatever way it sees fit without the pressure from the 19 needs, survival, and so on and so forth, which I think is highly, highly interesting if the principles are not established anymore around the needs of the tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they can be established about anything. So I don't know. To me, that sounds pretty wild. We'll see how it will feel. But then this break has it breaks the stream, you could say. So it has a big influence on many things. Also, the 3740, for example, will work differently. Love and passion will work very differently. That's coming out of the mutation of the 55, though not necessarily the 1949. But yeah, so I think it's gonna affect you probably too, but maybe you are around then to tell us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I could imagine that you'll just need to settle into a different way of running that life force energy that you have. It may feel just very different, not like what you've been used to all your life.
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if that gate was not available to me anymore, I'd be a reflector. But so, I mean, I'm not changing my own body graph, but if that, like, if that gate is not available anymore, it's like, I would probably feel like, I don't know. I have no idea.
That's super interesting. I don't know how. I mean, Ra is not alive to see if there's information stored inside him, if the body graph will change, like if the 1949 will actually stop to have a connection to each other. Yeah, then you would be a reflector, or if the quality changes, but life force is still there, but the pressure from the 19 falls away. That's a very good question.
I would say you're not a projector, but a reflector if that falls away, because nothing will be defined.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard projector.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Okay.
I'm a projector now, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You're a projector now. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, please let us know.
Yeah, I will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a long time to go. It's 3 more years to prepare for every eventuality.
Yeah.
And I think just knowing, if you feel different, just knowing what the reasoning is behind that. You know, where does it come from that you feel different? Yeah, what else do we have?
I have some. We had some more information about the reflectors being together. So one was the way others maybe looked at us, or how I felt, how I was interacted with. But another thing was also how it actually felt to be in the aura of other reflectors, and that was truly amazing. I've been with one reflector before, but to be with really correct ones and several of them, it was kind of mind-blowing. It felt very light. It felt like we would start floating any moment. Was a lot of joy, was a lot of like happiness, and yeah, we all felt very alien. But just in general, this feeling of, it's almost a little bit removed or a little bit out of whatever else is going on. And what was also very funny maybe is that, you know, there were people talking about projectors, people talking about generators, this woman that I talked about talking about manifestors, and then we decided, well, we probably should do something about reflectors too. So what we did is we gathered in the big room, just us, like nobody was allowed to come in, and it was a long big room. And we were there for about an hour or 45 minutes and talked, and then we started to simply become silent. And then the people came in at the so as far away as possible, so we had most space for the auras. And our talk about reflectors was silence. So we simply sat there while the people on the other end were experiencing whatever they were experiencing. And that was also, I just found it really funny because there was nothing to say. And people still had quite the experience when they were just sitting on the other side of the room.
Yeah. I can well imagine that. And you said that some of them reflectors there had studied with Ra, so they'd been in the experiment for many, many years, right?
Yes, yeah, at least two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another little data blip, which is simply a little information that impacted me, is that you can actually, when it comes to love and sexuality, you can look at your profile and you get a lot of information out of there, like the way you interact with or what you're looking for is on the personality side of your profile. And so there's 6 different types. They come out of the 6 because the gate 6 is what defines our way of penetrating the other in an auric way, of course. And I don't know if I get, I maybe don't, I probably can't get all of them anymore, but it's really useful or was really inspiring for me to read them. I remember the 2. The profile 2 is about shyness and boldness.
Profile 2, like here, the
black one.
I see. So okay.
So profile 2 is about shyness and boldness. The 4 is about how did they call it? There's such a good word. But basically you can't have intimacy until you're friends, and then every friend is a potential partner for intimacy.
4 for the 4.
Yeah, for the 4.
For the 4 here.
Yes.
Okay.
And the 6 is also the one I remember. The 6 is kind of, once again, outside of everything else. The 6 is only interested in soulmates and nothing else. and they can kind of, yeah, to me at least, it was always a bit hard to understand, like, what's this energy like? But it's kind of looking outside of the normal, outside of what everybody else interested in. The 6 is interested in what's outside, is interested in, yeah, something else.
Hold on, say that again.
It's like, you know, the 1 to the 5, it's almost, to me, this is relatable. The 1 to the 5, they all have their own ways of intimacy, maybe in many ways, right? Not only sexual, but also the intimate friendship. That's all kind of makes sense to me. The 6 somehow I never really got, because the 6 is looking outside of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's looking already over the plate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You also shared with me something about manifestors and dressing. Do you want to share that here too?
That was just really funny. All the manifestors that I saw, they were all dressed strangely, you could say. Not strangely, what's a good word?
Different, uniquely.
Yeah, different, very different. Like, yeah, in tracksuits or with many, like with feathers or special hats, or they were really out there with their clothing, and it was completely natural on them. Like, it fit so well. It was truly them. They felt so comfortable. It was an expression of themselves. And then you had other people who were also dressed in that way, where it didn't fit. And those who were generators trying to be manifestors, often with an open throat, trying to attract attention.
Yeah.
And what was very cool was that it was so easy to see in this field of uniqueness, like, or maybe not for everybody, but at least we had conversations about it as reflectors, right? We see who doesn't fit or what doesn't fit. And it was easy to see that this doesn't fit, this doesn't quite feel right from the frequency. And during the festival, we got to know that it's a generator. I don't know if he had an open throat. There was one that was most obvious.
Mm-hmm. So these are conversations you have with other reflectors, because the reflectors actually see the odd man out?
I mean, yeah, we had a lot of these. You know, it was so cool to be able to observe for the reflectors. When do they get up of a lecture and simply walk out? And how do I feel in this lecture? And I usually got up 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after the other reflector. Or talking about these things, like what fits, what doesn't fit, what's in alignment, what's out of alignment, is such a. I mean, there were kind of the 4 A4 papers with several things about the type, and the biggest thing was a question that the type asks. So the generator asks, who am I? The projector asks, who are you? The manifestor asks, who can I impact? And the reflector asks, who's different or what's different? And that really, really, really resonated. It's all we're focused on. Like, does it fit? Does it not fit? How is it different? Is it different in a good way? Is it unique? Is it homogenized? Is it like, or also how I approach experiences is, I want to be able to get a differentiation of something that I already know. So that's why I'm only interested in uniqueness. The only way I can truly get new data for finding out who or what's different is if I meet something that I haven't met before. I can compare it and this is my way of gaining awareness. And it was so cool to see other reflectors work in the same way, and be able to share with them. I mean, there's one of the manifestors. It was so funny. He was an artist, and he brought the video that he made. And it was clear from the start that it didn't fit, but nobody dared to challenge the manifestor. An emotional manifestor, nonetheless. And he played his video, and at the end there were 5 people left, but the first one who left were the reflectors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another word for not correct or different is and not aligned, genuine, authentic.
Well, to be honest, that video of the manifestor was authentic, and his playing it there was also authentic. It was just really bad. Like, what to do? He was not living not self. While he did that, that was kind of an interesting experience. Because that was part of the group organizing the evening. So he wanted to play his video in the evening that the WA experiment was supposed to organize, right? I could see that this is not gonna go well. And there were other people who spoke it's not gonna go well, this doesn't fit. But the circumstance was such that there was no remedying the solution that was correct either. So what to do? You simply let it run. Most often, it's if something is not genuine, that will kind of physically hurt reflectors. It's very difficult to be with homogenized people who are living something that is not genuine. But something that's different, not aligned. Sometimes it's also that in the big clockwork of all that is happening, this doesn't fit. But from the perspective of the person involved, it's still correct. And then you get very interesting situations.
Okay. Well, thank you. Last round of, does anybody have any questions? And then I would say we will close this. Thank you to everybody who's watching. How do I do this?